Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. This is Jeremy with Land Say Go, and we are back to bring you a saucy future deck tech. Red-green Dinosaurs is nothing new, but new additions from Core Set 2020 are promising to make enraged triggers meaningful and more organic. Frankly, it appears that the design team at WotC has saved the best for last with Dinosaurs, and I am excited about the prospect of fast and competitive decks in this current meta. I feel green's gotten some excellent pieces in the upcoming set that create more resiliency and a 2-drop Dinosaur that probably should have been printed a year ago. Let's dive right into this fairly budget deck. You should have most of the pieces and only need a couple of additional to really be able to beat down your local meta on that first Friday Night Magic after the release of the new core set. Marauding Raptor at 4 copies is an outstanding 2-drop magic card. Even outside of Dinosaur synergies, a 2/3 for 2 mana that reduces the casting cost of our creature spells by 1 colorless mana is awesome. It states that it deals 2 damage to creatures when they enter the battlefield, and that if that creature is a dinosaur, that Marauding Raptor gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Let's talk about value, folks. So let me get this straight. I now have a 2-drop that reduces the casting cost of my creatures, and to be completely honest, the casting cost of Dinosaurs often nets you value in terms of power and toughness anyway, and a trigger that activates the enraged triggers on my other dinosaur creatures when they enter the battlefield? Yes, sign me up. Drover the Mighty, which I just happened to have a playset of signed at GPKC in June, is the Dinosaur Mana Nerd. Luckily, the power and toughness boost it receives for a dinosaur being under our control saves it from the Marauding Raptor's damage on ETB, and we get a mana of any color for tapping it. But I digress. Let's get back to the dinosaur value train here. Enraged triggers are a real thing and can make for some exciting interactions with Marauding Raptor on the battlefield, but we have to be deliberate about our play. More than one Marauding Raptor can be a problem for some of our lower toughness creatures. Ranging Raptors, for example, is a little ramp engine in our Dino deck, 3 copies. There is something beautiful about being able to cast it for 2 mana with an active Marauding Raptor, hit the Enrage trigger, and pop a basic land onto the battlefield. It's a sweet science, and when you're playing it, you realize that this is the mechanic standard Dinosaurs needed all along. Thrashing Brontodon does not showcase an Enrage trigger, but it has a fat butt and some much needed mainboard control for enchantments and artifacts, so we run 3 copies. Frankly, Thrashing Brontodon stonewalls various aggro decks and can slow the game down substantially enough that we can get to our mid-game dominance. Ripjaw Raptor is disgusting when the Enrage trigger is being activated upon entering the battlefield, so we run a full playset. We are essentially replacing the card in our hand, and in situations where your line of play sees you with 2 Marauding Raptors on the battlefield as you cast the Ripjaw, you are drawing 2 cards and pumping both Raptors. What ends up happening here is one of those "duh, this is good" moments when this sequence takes place. Ripjaw Raptor is just a dynamite magic card in this meta. The card has been the topic of much conjecture among the Land Say Go team, and we firmly believe that this card makes your opponent do stupid things and commit to poor lines of play. Regisaur Alpha doesn't provide us with a meaningful enrage trigger like Brontodon, but that doesn't stop it from being tremendously valuable to our game plan, so we run 4 copies. With an active Marauding Raptor, we are getting to cast it for 4 converted mana cost and getting 7 power with the Dino token on the board, with the added upside of giving each of our creatures haste. It's the perfect creature card to bring back from the graveyard with a spell we will cover in a moment and a total house. Not to mention, the 2 dinosaurs on the ETB pump the Raptor twice. Our final dinosaur is a Tali Primal Storm. Originally, I'd tried to make this a Polyraptor combo deck, which is totally possible. I mean, I pulled the Polyraptor combo off in testing many times, but more often than not, the infinite tokens resulted in a draw. And even though it was cool to go infinite, it just didn't work. It doesn't feel good. You could absolutely hard commit to the combo with cards like Makeshift Munitions to have a sack outlet, but I elected not to and play a simpler, more purpose-driven build here. Atali is a beater. He is singleton in this list due to his restrictive casting cost, and at times while testing, I wonder if the best course of action is not to simply take Atali out and commit to 5 CMC Carnage Tyrants. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we go Naya and really exploit the Enraged triggers and Marauding Raptor. For now, just play Atali and get me your feedback. 2 copies of Pulse of Marasa is back in Core Set 2020, and I could not be happier. Yippee! Seriously though, this card helps us in a number of ways. We get to the hand recursion of our threats, which works excellently with Regisaur. We gain 6 life, which helps, and we get a creature back. Let me ask you this, is Bond of Flourishing just better here? I lean towards no, mainly because Pulse gains more life and offers recursion at instant speed, as opposed to less life and more tutor at sorcery speed. Continuing discussions regarding our utility package, I elected to include 3 copies of Domri's Ambush. Being able to deal direct damage to creatures and planeswalkers and buff our creatures ahead of attack is really beneficial. It's sorcery speed, but it's a fantastic card. It has been a bone breaker for opponents who aren't expecting us to include direct damage in our game plan, but when you throw in planeswalkers as additional potential targets, Ambush becomes a very worthwhile inclusion for us. Savage Stomp is more of the fight mechanic of old, and again, exceptional in a Dinosaur list. When we target a Dinosaur, it costs 1 green mana, and we get to activate our Enrage triggers. Fighting a Ripjaw Raptor or Ranging Raptor is a win for us, and removal targeting our opponent's board. This card is outstanding, and I want you to know that it can and does win you games. Focus on Enrage triggers. Thunderherd Migration is more ramp in an already ramp-heavy deck. You may consider including any other 2 cards you want to include, but I elect to thin my deck on the cheap with Migration in an effort to never miss my curve. It is perfectly acceptable to keep an opening hand with Migration over Drover, but it's your call. Domri Anarch of Bolas is the only planeswalker we run, and at that, only 3 copies. I wanted to have options for uncounterable creatures. I love the idea of buffing our entire team in the power department and more targeted removal in the form of fighting that activates Enrage triggers. Feels great and plays even better. Domri is perfect here. Lands include a playset of Rootbound Crag, a playset of Stomping Ground, 2 mountains, and 14 forests. Our sideboard has some interesting options that were specifically chosen to address the most problematic counters to a deck like ours, which can be fairly fragile at times. We aren't complex and multifaceted. We play creatures and we turn them sideways. Veil of Summer is incredible from Core Set 2020, and we're running 4 copies in our sideboard. This card will be an auto-include for decks on green until rotation. Guaranteed. There are a number of issues this card answers: counter spells, hand destruction, targeted removal, planeswalker abilities, ETB triggers from creatures that are black or blue, etc., etc. We gain hexproof from blue and black, and so do our permanents. We also get to replace the card in our hand when we cast it. Veil of Summer is incredible. 3 copies of Cindervines further punishes control. I feel this card is becoming more mute in the standard meta, but I always err on the side of caution and want to have an abundance of answers if I need them. I hate planeswalkers, of course, unless they are my planeswalkers, so we run 3 copies of Sorcerous Spyglass. It feels good to completely shut down planeswalkers that are critical to the success of our opponent's game plan. This card is essential in a creature deck, basically irreplaceable from the sideboard 15. Vivian Reed at 3 copies in our sideboard should really be no big surprise. She accompanies our deck extremely well, and my inclusion of her in this list may be a bit of a cop-out, not gonna lie. I'm not stuck on her inclusion in the sideboard, and with so many great options to include in her stead, I recommend you experiment and let us know what you think. Carnage Tyrant. I know we brought him up before, and you should have known he would wiggle his way into the list of 75 somehow. But here it is, the Tyrant. 2 copies for posterity. And that's it, folks. I'm telling you, this Marauding Raptor Enraged Dinosaur Super Fiesta Funtime deck is exactly what you need to be budget conscious, use a pile of cards you likely already have, and begin the process of exploring Enrage with more finesse. That is until rotation in September, folks. Take this list for a spin, show me your version of the list, and join us for discussion at www.landsaygo.com. The sideboard for our Facebook group for discussions with other Magic players. Catch us on Twitch for streams Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and click that subscribe button here on YouTube, please. This is Jeremy at Landsay Go. Thanks for watching, and remember, we can't do this without you.